A very warm welcome to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are listening to me from. Welcome to this webinar on understanding Īśvarapraṇidhānā in our present context. I'll start with a prayer. Please join me from where you are. Yogena chittasya padena vācāṃ Nalam sharirasya cha vaidyakena Yopakarottam pravaram munam Patanjalim pranjalirānatosmi Abhavu purushākaram Shankhachakrāsidhārinam Sahasrashirasam shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Shrimate Anantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha Shri Krishnavagīśayatīśvarābhyāṃ Samprāpta-cakrāṅkana-bhāṣya-sāram Śrīmūtnarangendra-yato samarpitasvam Shri Krishnamaryam Guruvaryamīde Virodhe Kartike Māse Shatatara Krutodayam Yogacharyam Krishnamaryam Guruvaryamaham bhaje Krishna Suridaya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimadvenkatanathāryam Vandeham Yogadeshikam Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Īśvarapraṇidhānā. Understanding and practicing Īśvarapraṇidhānā in times of crisis. We see in the Yogasūtra three very clear paths presented by Patanjali, intended to lead us towards an experience of samadhi, a state of deep meditative absorption, which is possible only by a sustained state of sattva. Eventually, the goal is to move towards kaivalya. This is the goal of the Yogasūtra. We see three clear pathways. One is the pathway of moving inwards through meditation, in which, while there are many options presented in chapter 1, Patanjali seems to emphasize the importance of Īśvarapraṇidhānā. Second pathway is to bring in attention, mindfulness, to every action, regardless of whether it's an ordinary daily action or something sacred or special, through the pathway of Kriya Yoga, where Īśvarapraṇidhānā is one of three things. Tapas, Svadhyaya, Īśvarapraṇidhānā, together representing Kriya Yoga. The third pathway is the pathway of Ashtanga Yoga, where the goal is eventually meditation, but the commencing point is at a much more grosser level, where Patanjali guides us in working from the yamas, niyamas, and then bearing progressively through asana, pranayama, and pratyahara, eventually moving to dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Now, what we see in all these three pathways is that the common link is Īśvarapraṇidhānā. Krishnamacharya specifically values this sutra very highly, and to the point where in his commentary in the Yogavalli, Krishnamacharya gives so much importance to the concept of Īśvarapraṇidhānā that in his commentary itself, he says, is divided into two parts. One is pre-Īśvarapraṇidhānā, which is up till Sutra 122, and post-Īśvarapraṇidhānā, from Sutra 123 to the rest of the chapter. And his very strong emphasis again from Krishnamacharya's perspective is that in our present days and times, the kind of abhyasa, vairagya, or even shraddha that is mandated by the Yogasūtra, and what comes through when we look at the commentaries, even that, we don't even have the elementary amount of perseverance and determination to follow that path of Abhyasa and Vairagya. And so he says, it is only by coming about with a shift in our attitude that one has to change our attitude, our relationship to not just oneself, to the world around us, how to forge in a relationship with something that is higher. And this is the only path by which the gateway of yoga opens, is Krishnamacharya's very emphatic guideline from his comment. One very beautiful idea that is presented across all Vedic literature is this notion of one supreme being present in everything, everywhere. And this is widely discussed across all Vedic lore, whether it's the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Itihasas, the various Dharma Shastras, all the Darshanas we see, or even the Acharya Paramparas through the various parts of Vedanta, we see the same idea being present. And the Purusha Suktam tells us that it says that beyond any doubt, there is something that is higher and beyond everything else. Atyatishta Dashangulam, this being that is the source of this universe, stands above and beyond all of its creation. You have a similar idea in the Mahanarayana Upanishad, which says, Ambhasya pare bhuvanasya madhye nakasya prishte mahato mahiyan. Mahato mahiyan, the magnificence of this Īśvara, of this supreme being, cannot be explained through mere words. It's beyond the dimensions of the sky, of the world that we know, of the atmosphere, and beyond even the reaches of heaven. Just to have a little clarity about certain terms that are very frequently used in the yoga context: Brahman, Īśvara, Jivatma, Prakriti. The supreme truth is one. There is only one truth. This is the truth of the Brahman. Brahman, from the root Brih or Bruhi, Samanta, that which is always in expansion. What are the attributes of this Brahman? Brahman is Satyam. It is true. It exists. It is real. In fact, it is the only truth. Jnanam, its very nature is knowledge. Anantam, infinite, cannot be defined by mere thoughts or words. As the Brahmanandavali puts it so beautifully, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha anandam brahmano vidvan. The one who knows the Brahman knows the highest level of happiness, the highest level of joy is what the Upanishad tells us. This is the Shuddha Brahman, the pure Brahman, which is beyond the realm of the Prapancha. Prapancha refers to this world of matter. Brahman is Prapanchatīta, beyond the dimension of matter. Īśvara, also known as Paramatma, you could say, is how this transcendent Brahman, which cannot be described through words, which cannot be perceived to have a certain form. How is this Brahman comprehended by us? How do we communicate through this being known as Īśvara? It is experienced as a great intelligence, as a Maha Chaitanya. We will see, as Patanjali says, what does this Īśvara do? The one who creates, preserves, sustains, and also dissolves all creation. Īśvara is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. And so you could say that while Brahman is the macrocosmos, it's known as the Samashti, the Īśvara is manifest Brahman in all creation. Atma, the soul, is known as Vyashti at the microcosmic level, at an individual level, where the soul, human soul, in association with body, senses, mind, and all the inherent vasanas and Saṁskāra-s of the mind, which is the embodied soul, is known as Jivatma. It is bound on account of karma. When that soul is freed through the efforts made by the mind, the same soul is known as Atma. Now this Brahman that we see, that we hear, we can't see the Brahman directly, but the Brahman that is the source of this universe is also present as the Antaryami, the Īśvara present within, enshrined in the space of the heart. And all the Upanishads proclaim the same truth. What is above is below in all its creations. What is everywhere outside is also within us. And this is a fundamental truth of the Upanishads, that divinity is not to be sought outside, but this magnificence of Brahman is existent as the Antaryami, the indweller. This is what the Narayana Suktam so beautifully says, Hridayam Atmijaniyat. It is known as the heart, where Vishwasya Ayatanam Mahat. Ayatanam, the dwelling place, the resting place of this entire universe. It is beyond description. Mahat, it's the highest, it's the greatest. Where does this source dwell? It dwells in your heart space. Such a beautiful description. The Narayana Suktam is among the most evocative in terms of the imagery it invokes, of a lotus bud, of an inverted lotus bud that hangs suspended in the region of the heart. And inside it, it is suspended in all over, suspended in all directions by slender filaments, slender fibers. Within the center of this inverted lotus bud passes a minute, nano-sized pathway, which we in yoga call the Sushumna. At the heart of that is a tiny flame that burns, that glows with effulgence. At the very tip of that flame, smaller even than the size of an atom, rests this divinity, this Īśvara that is within us. The Mahanarayana Upanishad says, Anoraniyan, that which is of the size of an atom, subatomic. Mahato Mahiyan is also the most complex, the most expansive. Where is this? Atma Guhayam, in the space of the heart. And everything else that is not the soul, that is not Īśvara, that is not Brahman, is known as Prakriti, the manifest universe that this soul experiences through the lens of the mind. I am keeping this presentation very brief and superficial for now, because the point is to discuss a little bit about Īśvarapraṇidhānā. Indeed, if we have to study in Īśvarapraṇidhānā in detail, I think we could need several sessions, and perhaps we can look at that later. Ekam sat vipraha bahudha vadanti. There is one truth, but the men of wisdom speak of this truth. They perceive this truth in so many different ways, in so many forms, and they speak of this truth. And this is the very foundation, you could say, of Sanatana Dharma, one truth, Ekam Sat. And that truth can be experienced by every one of us in our own unique ways, depending on our culture, depending on our associations, our values, our beliefs, everything. And underlying this is the belief that everything in this universe is Brahman, and therefore there is a celebration of this supreme. This is Īśvarapraṇidhānā. And we could, this idea of Īśvarapraṇidhānā, to meditate on something that's higher, could be done in two ways. One, through the pathway of, visualizing this abstract, indefinable Brahman, or a much simpler form, the personal deity, the Īśvara. And so, depending on my jnana, depending on the refinement that I possess, depending on the quality of my mind, what someone calls Krishna, someone else could call Rama, someone could call Shiva, someone else could call Allah. It doesn't matter. Someone else could call Jesus, Ahurmasta. The names don't matter. The truth is one. But to be able to give this kind of a deep reverential relationship with this Īśvara, there is necessarily a need for both bhakti and shraddha. As Krishnamacharya often would say, Narayana is my Īśvara, my personal Īśvara. It is for you to look for, to search, and to find your Īśvara in your traditions, in your roots. Who is this Īśvara? We look at the Yogasūtra. The translations that I give you are the translations of Sir Sri T.K. Videsikacha. Klesha karma vipaka ashayaihi apramrishtaha purusha vishesha Īśvaraha. This Īśvara is not an ordinary being. Vishesha Purusha. Why? Because the rest of these Purushas, the rest of the souls, all of us, are bound by a cycle of klesha, clouding of the mind. The actions, the karma that is born of this clouding, consequences, the vipaka of those actions, and the ashaya, impressions, the subtle latent impressions that these actions and their consequences leave behind on the mind. This is what causes the cycle of karma to perpetuate for all of us. Even a yogi who has transcended the mundane and is in a state of samadhi, nevertheless began at some point from kesha, from clouding, and progressively worked on reducing the clouding. However, Īśvara is a Vishesha Purusha because Īśvara has never been bound by the cycle of klesha, karma, vipaka and ashaya. Tatra niratishayam sarvagnya bijam. Sarvagnya, in that Īśvara is sarvagnya, omniscient. That Īśvara is the seed of all knowledge, unsurpassed, niratishayam, unsurpassed by everything else. Patanjali says, Esha Purvesham api Guruhu Kalena Anavacheda, eternal teacher of teachers, the ultimate teacher and the source of all teachings from the past, present and future. This is how Īśvara is envisioned in the Yogasūtra, and these ideas are supplemented across Vedic and Vedantic literature. What is Īśvarapraṇidhānā? I am just giving you the highlights here. Vyāsa's commentary tells us, commentary to 123 specifically says, Pranidhana is bhakti vishesha. It's a very special kind of bhakti. What is this bhakti? Bhakti comes from the root bhaj, which means to serve. How do you serve? You serve not out of fear. You serve not out of compulsion. But you serve with great love, with great devotion and with great joy. And therein lies this Īśvarapraṇidhānā, the connection. And when one connects and surrenders entirely unto this Īśvara, then naturally the outcomes of yoga, the benefits of yoga, samadhi, is attainable. Not just samadhi, eventually kaivalyan is possible. Say all the commentators, very, very strongly endorsed by Krishnamacharya. In chapter 2, where Īśvarapraṇidhānā is presented, in the context of Kriya Yoga, from a much more action-oriented perspective, Vyāsa says, Īśvarapraṇidhānam sarvakriyānam paramaguru arpanam. The offering of every action to the supreme teacher, to the teacher of all teachers, not merely offering the action, but phalam sannyasova, also letting go of ownership of consequences of an action. And so this ability to surrender completely, unconditionally, without any strings attached, without placing any commas, just a complete absolute surrender is possible only where there is great reverence and great love for this being, this Īśvara to whom one surrenders. Why Īśvarapraṇidhānā, if we look at it from a Yogasūtra perspective? Patanjali says in 129, Pratyaketana adhigamaha api antaraya abhavashya. He gives us two benefits to Īśvarapraṇidhānā, that the practitioner, the sadhaka, over time moves inwards to appreciate the true nature of the self. Not only that, the antarayas are abhava, they cease to be sources of disturbance. So when we look at chapter 2, Īśvarapraṇidhānā, along with tapas and swadhyaya, the benefit there is a combined benefit. Patanjali says, samadhi bhavanatha klesha anukaranatha. Very similar to the benefit given in 129. What happens in Kriya Yoga, where Īśvarapraṇidhānā is a part? The samadhi bhavam, the ability to experience a state of meditative absorption is possible, and klesha anukaranam, there is a weakening of the kleshas of clouding. In speaking about Īśvarapraṇidhānā as one of the niyamas later in chapter 2, samadhi siddhi Īśvarapraṇidhānā. The practice of Īśvarapraṇidhānā as a niyama gives us the ability to completely be absorbed in any object of meditation. Samadhi siddhi is the benefit given. This is textual. This is what the Yogasūtra says. Let's now look at Īśvarapraṇidhānā from a practical, possibly more a 21st century perspective. merely conceptualizing Īśvara, many of us struggle with this idea, especially given the diversity. There are many traps that we fall into, and therefore we find it very hard. And to many people, this notion of bringing in a concept of Īśvara seems to be separate from yoga, whereas in reality, when we look at the Yogasūtra and all the allied texts, we see that Īśvarapraṇidhānā is aligned so beautifully to the message that Yogasūtra has to offer. What is this alignment? We will see. What is Īśvara? Merely conceptualizing a supreme entity is okay but not adequate. And therefore, what is it in practice? A deep awareness that I, not all powerful, but you at an individual level, not all powerful, and we collectively are not powerful. No matter how much we seem to have power, the reality is that we are limited. I am limited. You are limited. We all are limited. How are we limited? By our bodies, by our senses, by our minds, by the vasanas, the Saṁskāra-s that cloud us. And also as a consequence, through these thought process, through the choices that we make of what to say, what to speak, what to do, we also find ourselves limited by situations we find ourselves in, irrespective of whether the situation is of our own making or not. In a previous lecture, I spoke about adhyatmika dukkham, where there is self-generated suffering, adhibhautika, where there is disturbance caused on account of other beings, or adhidaivika, factors beyond our control. Regardless of this, the fact remains that we are human, and there is only so much that we can do. And this situation with the worldwide pandemic, if it doesn't do anything else, what it has highlighted for us, possibly in 70 vision, in that kind of a display, is the fact that we are not in control. No matter how much we think we are, there is a limitation. And over and above this, it's this notion that there is something, you name it whatever you wish, but there is something that has a power that exists, that sustains this universe, that keeps everything going, that is beyond a limited ordinary human capability. And to that I connect, to that I surrender. That Īśvara is the Īśvara to whom the Yogasūtra says we need to offer our loyalty to. What is this Īśvarapraṇidhānā? From a very practical point of view, we leave aside for the time being the spiritual ideas of meditation, of visualizing this Īśvara as the manifest form of the Brahman, as the magnificent power that sustains this entire universe. Leaving that aside, in the here and now, what is it that Īśvarapraṇidhānā is? Sri Yogasūtra would often say that at the fundamental level, Īśvarapraṇidhānā is two things. The first, acceptance. Second is letting go. What is it that I accept? I accept everything. At this moment, as it comes, I accept it. This moment, every moment. What does this acceptance entail? Honestly, for us, where we are now, this is a realization I think that's hitting the most powerful nations of the world, that despite the cutting edge advances that we've made in science and technology, there's nothing we can do against this minuscule virus that has created such a panic, such chaos across the world. And so, despite all our advancements, we are not even able to envision or comprehend the sheer magnificence and the remarkable interconnectedness of our world, let alone creating a new one. We might speak about cloning, we might speak about generation of cells in a laboratory, but science yet cannot create this universe that we have. And to accept, therefore, that there is something higher, accept that the best made plans, the best laid plans can go awry, it can fail. To accept that failure is not an end, and that change in itself is not negative, that in every change there is something of note or something of value that one can take away from that. It teaches us to accept limitations in ourselves and others. Limitations that I think again are in glaring display now. Individual limitations, collective limitations, government level limitations, limitations with regard to what even the medical profession can do, and to accept this as a reality, to accept that collectively, despite the strength in numbers, despite our technological power, what we are and what our planet is just but one pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan says, just one speck in a much larger canvas, and to acknowledge this with great reverence and humility. Īśvarapraṇidhānā is to accept everything that you have at this moment. The ability to sit with a roof over our heads, to be able to eat the food that we want to sleep at night, to do what we want to have the benefit of having some money saved up in the bank to tide us through these difficult months. Everything is gift. Everything has to be valued, received with great gratitude, reflected upon. Always that in the reflection of gratitude is where it truly supports us to hold everything as precious. And when it comes time to pass it on, so we are only caretakers. We are merely instruments. And this is Īśvarapraṇidhānā. And most importantly, to accept that change is inevitable and to align ourselves to the change. The more you fight the change, the harder it is, the more we struggle. The more we deny the change, the more we suffer. The simplest path is to accept the change. Here I'm not saying that one does not feel disappointment, that one does not feel sad. You feel it, but then you take the next step. And therein lies strength. Therein lies the resilience that Īśvarapraṇidhānā can give us, to align ourselves with things that change as they do, and to cope with that change in the best possible manner, with intelligence, with sensitivity, with compassion, and with clarity, both for oneself and for those around us. Īśvarapraṇidhānā is our ability to let go, and so many things we need to let go. First of all, this ego-driven ownership of ideas. My idea, I copyright it, I patent it, my action, this belongs to me, this needs to go. In reality, we are but instruments. To let go of fear, worry, anxiety, these are the various emotional responses that come from our perception, a perceived lack of control, and therefore dysfunctional behavior, rages, irritation, aggression, frustration. All of these are just one after the other loops that come from the clouding of fear and anxiety. We have to learn to let go, because fear or the worry is not leading us anywhere productive. So let go of our rigidity, of that need to be completely in control, planning, implementing. You make a minute-to-minute, day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month calendar. The last few months have shown us that all calendars are redundant. We can't plan anything at all. All we can do is watch, wait, and pray. This is all we can do. And so that rigidity has to go. Let go of that rajas-driven urge to be in the driver's seat. Always. We can be driven sometimes, and to enjoy this journey as we sit as a passenger, flowing as life takes us. So let go of greed, hatred, and jealousy. Let go of that constant pressure to be productive, to be efficient, to be in action all the time. Let go of the desire for power, for prestige, for recognition and validation. And most importantly, to let go of that urge to be in control. Control of myself, control of my body, control of my space, control of time, control of people, and most to our detriment, in control of nature. This is what has led us to where we are today. And therefore, we realize that Īśvarapraṇidhānā, the ability to accept what is and to let go, to keep letting go, is the only path open to us. How do we demonstrate this Īśvarapraṇidhānā? In our action, through reverence, through a regard for nature, through supportive practices, reduction, reusing, recycling. These are terms that we throw around. This is a time for us to actually think about how we can make a conscious effort to use the resources that are available to us without exploiting them. So many lessons. In doing this is Īśvarapraṇidhānā. The performance of certain simple rituals. So many people where it might even be from a perspective of offering something to God in the form of stringing garlands. This is a very common practice in many cultures. Flowers are garlanded together and offered in worship. This is the ritual of stringing a garland. Why? Not for me, not to adorn myself and to make myself look beautiful, but to offer it to something higher. Maintenance of an essential personal hygiene. Patanjali speaks about shaucha, and he says bahya shaucha and anta shaucha, cleanliness and hygiene. Why? Because this body is the dwelling place of something that is special. It needs to be looked after. Self-care is essential. In India, in many households, we have a habit of any food that is offered is cooked without tasting. It's first offered to the divine. We call this Nrithya. The idea being that, remember, when this is offered to the divine, you do it with your 100% attention, using the best ingredients in the best way possible. When there is that kind of attention, there is the question of error. And then to consume what is offered, what is sanctified, that's prasada. These are simple rituals that show us how Īśvarapraṇidhānā can be done in action. Then we have yajna, large-scale rituals, puja, worship, practices of aradhana in home shrines, in temples, in concentrated spaces, using idols. All of these are external forms of helping us connect to this notion of something that is to channelize the senses, the jnanendriyas and the karmendriyas, divert them to useful, productive engagements where we learn and we serve. These are ways of Īśvarapraṇidhānā in action. And most importantly, charity. To serve the community, to serve the world at large, whether it's human or other creatures. How? Through so many forms. Through individual charity, giving of money, giving of food, clothing, shelter, donations, or providing for someone's education, giving the underprivileged access to resources, to education, building healthcare facilities, large places for people to stay, construction of bus stands. All of these are actions of Īśvarapraṇidhānā in practice that so many of us do, but often don't think of. Every one of this is Īśvarapraṇidhānā through action. And then Īśvarapraṇidhānā through the instrument of speech, through our speech, because this is another very important faculty. The recitation of mantra is considered one of the highest ways of Īśvarapraṇidhānā. In fact, Patanjali says, how does one connect to this Īśvara? Tasya vācakaha pranavaha. The pranava, omkara, which is the sound representing this entire universe and all its creatures, that is the sound that can be used to link this Īśvara principle. Another way is what we call kirtana, to sing. And singing traditions are common across the world, regardless of what your faith is, regardless of what religion you practice. Sound is inherent, sacred chanting is inherent. The reading of scriptures and sacred literature is another path towards Īśvarapraṇidhānā. And at a very fundamental practical level, can we learn to speak with kindness, with sensitivity, with gentleness, at all times and in all situations. There is a very beautiful Subhashitani, a verse which says, Satyam brūyāt, priyam brūyāt. Speak the truth, speak it pleasantly. Na brūyāt, satyam apriyam. Never speak the truth in a harsh manner. Priyam chapi, na amritam brūyāt. Even if one speaks pleasantly in honeyed tones, never speak what is not true. So many beautiful ideas of how the very speech, what we give to someone who is going through difficulty, especially at this time, is a word of solace. Yes, things will be well. Don't worry, everything will be well. Everything will be fine. These are enough small ways of bringing Īśvarapraṇidhānā into our speech. And Īśvarapraṇidhānā is a constant in our thought process. what this tradition tells us is repeatedly orient yourself as an instrument. Offer everything to something that is higher, because when something is done for personal gain, necessarily we enter into competition with others. I want to be better. But when there is no competition at all, when there is an attitude of service, then sublimation happens. There are so many Vedic rituals which will, at every juncture, they will say, Idam namama, I have done this. So this is not mine. And the results are not mine. I give away. An expression of gratitude for everything. Just to say thank you. And there's a lot of research now about how expression of gratitude literally rewires the neurological centers in the brain. Īśvarapraṇidhānā buddhi. What do I say gratitude for? Everything that I have at this moment, rather than compare with what others have and what I do not have. To be able to act in the spirit of offering as if I am an instrument, without an attitude of doership. Kartathvam is, I am the doer, this belongs to me, this is mine. And yogaclass, this is for my pleasure. Can I engage, but in a detached manner? Can I develop the ability to accept what things are as they are, without regret, without acrimony, without criticism, without complaint? This is not apathy or indifference. It is to be present and to be grateful for the gift of this present moment. We see this ever-present mindfulness in everything, in so many little practices, little things that are done in the Indian tradition. When you wake up the first thing in the morning, you look at your palm and you say that here in my hands, Karagre Vasati Lakshmi, at the tips of my finger is Lakshmi. Karamadhye Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, is in the center of my palm. Karamule Sita Gauri, the Gauri, the one who is my protector, who guards me. She is at the base of the palm. What is this? This is a shloka that tells us that I have to be present now. I have the resources that I need are in my hands. Can I learn to use them with reverence, with value, without exploiting, without being exploited? Just one verse, but there's so much meaning. Similarly, before we set foot on the ground, we say there is a prayer that says Samudra Vasani Devi Parvatas Sanamandale Vishnupatni Namastubhyam Padasparsham Kshamaswame. As we set foot on the earth, there is this prayer which says, forgive me, for I step on you, I trample you. Forgive me for my invasion of your space. So this mindfulness is Īśvarapraṇidhānā. When we eat, there is a prayer again that we see in the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmarpanam brahmahavihi brahmagnau brahmanahutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahmakarma samadhina pranaya swaha panaya swaha vyanaya swaha udanaya swaha samanaya swaha. These are little mantras which says that everything that I eat, let it be brahmarpanam, let it go to that Brahman, let it nourish this Īśvara that is within me, so that I am mindful, so that I have value when I consume, so that I don't overeat, so that I don't hoard. All of this is Īśvarapraṇidhānā. When we breathe, there is a mantra where we invoke the presence of all the rivers in the waters that we use and say, let these waters cleanse me of all my impurities. And then, of course, the Sattvika Tyagam, the traditional prayer where we say, Kayena Vacha Manasendriyairva Buddhyatmanava Prakrite Swabhava Karomi Atyat Sakalam Parasmai Narayanayiti Samarpayami. Everything that I do, knowingly, unknowingly, through any of my faculties, I offer. This ability to constantly be in service, to be offering, is Īśvarapraṇidhānā at a practical level. Very importantly, the development of contentment. To be able to count everything as a blessing. Most importantly, we plan. Īśvarapraṇidhānā does not mean carelessness. It does not mean that we don't do what we have to do or make the effort. You plan, you make the effort, and yet be fluid enough to align to the changes as and when they occur. This is Īśvarapraṇidhānā in our thought process. Very often, we say that Īśvarapraṇidhānā, unfortunately, is very minimalized simply as belief in and worship of God, yes. It is worship of God. It is surrender to God. But unfortunately, interpreted through a very small, narrow perspective as religiosity, as merely belief in a particular form of God. And this brings in a whole host of conflicts and a lot of needless, across the world we see so much of violence in the name of religion. But this is not the message of the Yogasūtra, not the message of any of our of the Vedic and Vedantic texts. Īśvarapraṇidhānā marks a very significant, very vital shift in our attitude to ourselves, to other beings, and to nature at large, including a sense of reverence for all objects, animate or inanimate. The earth is revered, water is revered, fire is revered, space is revered. Anything, even a piece of paper, is of value. Some of you might have seen in India, this is a custom that has been ingrained into us, that if we happen to touch unknowingly any object with our feet or step on something, immediately there is a gesture of apology. Why? Because to touch with the feet indicates disrespect. Everything has to be treated with value, with reverence. This is Īśvarapraṇidhānā. When is this possible? It's possible only when you have a deep vismaya. Vismaya is a sense of wonderment about the sheer magnificence of this universe and all its creatures, of all nature. And Īśvarapraṇidhānā happens only on this great reverence for this abundance that we are blessed with. And this reverence, this sense of wonder, does not bring with it fear. It's not fear of something that's unknown. It's awe of something that is magnificent beyond belief. And neither is there a desire to claim control, claim ownership. But Īśvarapraṇidhānā happens where there is a sense of humility, of being, of understanding that every one of us is only a caretaker, temporarily, of something that is beyond value. And so we see that Īśvarapraṇidhānā in our lives is thinking, living, breathing, speaking, ingesting, exhaling, the wonder that is Brahman. And in this is not distorted in any way by our man-made constructs of religion, of community, of caste, of creed, or anything else that is only perpetuating difference and otherness. At its core, Īśvarapraṇidhānā is a spirit of unity, of being together. And this is something that has again been highlighted in this situation, that on the one hand, we find ourselves helpless. Not helpless in the true sense of the word. We feel that helplessness because I'm very sorry about that interruption. I have a very, very weak internet connection today. So please bear with me. But I'm almost at the end of my presentation and hopefully my internet will stay till we finish the practice. We speak about Īśvarapraṇidhānā. As I said, limiting it to religion is minimalizing it. And Krishna presents this so beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita. Specifically in chapter 9, almost the second part, the entire second part of the chapter, from verse 13 till verse 20, where Krishna tells us who is a bhakta, what does it mean to be in a relationship with the Ishvara, to be able to surrender. And these are beautiful ideas. He says, Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karunaevacha nirmamo nirahankara samadukha sukakshami. The one who doesn't hate any creature, is friendly and compassionate, who has no idea of me or mine, devoid of egoism, and who remains balanced in both sorrow and in joy. He is equanimous, who is forgiving. Santushtaha satatam yogi yatatma dridhanishtayaha mayi arpita manobuddhihi yo mad bhakta sami priya. The one who is ever content, who is a yogi, who has self-control, firm conviction, and who has dedicated his entire mind, intellect and faculties unto me. Such a person is a bhakta. Yasma no dvigate loke lopa no dvigate chayah harsha marsha bhayo dvega Bhayodvegair muktu yaha sacha me priyaha. Very beautiful idea. The one by whom the world is not disturbed, and the one who is not disturbed by the world, is free of the extremes of joy, of impatience, of fear, of anxiety. Such a person is a bhakta. Anapekshaha shuchirdaksha udasino gatadhyataha sarvarambha parityagi yomadbhaktaha same priyaha. One who has no desires, not driven by desire, pure, dexterous ability to align, be able to move with the flow. One sarva arambha parityagi. There is no pressure to constantly start to work, who is free from fear. Such a person, my bhakta. Yona hrishyati na dveshti, shochati na kankshati, shubha ashubha parityagi bhaktiman yaha same priyaha. One who does not rejoice, nor worry, nor lament, nor crave or hanker, and who is neutral to both good or bad. Such a person is a bhakta. Samaha shatraucha mitrecha tatha mana apamanayoho shita ushna sukha dukkheshu samaha samgavivarditaha. One who is neutral, again, who regards friend and foe as the same. There is no difference in how one views a friend or a foe. Neutral in honor and dishonor. No perception of difference between cold, heat, happiness, sorrow. Free of attachment. A vairagi. Such a person is a bhakta. Pulya, ninda, sutir, mauni, santushto, yena kenachit, aniketaha, hiramatihi, bhaktimanne priyo naraha. One to whom both praise and censure are the same. Who is silent, ever content? Very interesting idea. Aniketaha, the one who literally is homeless, who is not attached to a particular place. Because the moment we stay somewhere, we form an attachment. This is the hallmark of a yogi. In traditional times, the yogis, the sadhus, the sannyasis, they will say would not stay in a place for longer than the time it took to milk a cow. This is just an analogy given to show us that how quickly our attachments build. And so these are the attributes of one who practices Īśvarapraṇidhānā. And this is over and above the rigid forms of religion. Because this is what being centered in the self is. This is what spirituality is all about. And so at a practical level, we see that Īśvarapraṇidhānā is a complete shift in our attitude, in our thoughts, in our words, in our behavior. Where is it coming from? From a place of great wonder, of great reverence for everything, to perceive everything as special, to perceive everything as having value. I conclude a very beautiful verse, a traditional verse, which tells us what is Īśvarapraṇidhānā in its subtlest, in its simplest, I won't even say subtle, but it is simplest, most doable form. It says, see, the analogy is made to the offering of flowers. Why do we offer flowers? There is a practice in our tradition where, as a part of worship, the choicest blooms are collected and offered symbolically, because the idea is that as you take a flower with your 5 fingers, they represent the senses. There could be a tendency to use this for self-gratification. Instead, by subjugating the urge or the pressure of the senses, the flower is offered to something else, to something higher. What are these flowers that we need to offer? This is beautiful words. Ahimsa prathamam pushpam pushpamindriya nigraha sarvabhuta daya pushpam shama pushpam visheshataha shanti pushpam tapa pushpam jnanam pushpam tathaiva cha satyam cha ashtavibhum pushpam Vishnu Preetikaram Bhavet. Ahimsa. Not to hurt anyone in thought, word or deed. It's one flower. Indriya Nigraha, the ability to restrain, to regulate the senses. Sarva Bhuta Daya Pushpa, compassion to every creature. This is the need of the hour. There are reports of people ostracizing doctors, nurses, frontline workers. In large apartment complexes, they are not allowed to enter. This is not Daya. Where are we going? We are losing our humanity. This is what we need to cultivate, the ability to have compassion for every creature, regardless of whether one likes it or not. Kshama Pushpam Visheshatah, a special flower indeed is Kshama, the ability to forgive. To let bygones be bygones and to move on. Not hold on with resentment. This is Kshama. Shanti Pushpam, tranquility. Not be aggravated or agitated in any circumstance. Apa Pushpam, the discipline of the body, of the mind, of the speech, of our senses. Discipline in ahara, in the food that we eat, in how much we eat, how much we drink. Discipline in our lifestyle, in the vihara. Discipline in our thoughts, discipline in our conduct. Ayurveda gives us 4 essentials: ahara, vihara, achara and vichara. Bringing this discipline in is tapas. Jnanam, essential. At this time we need clarity. Clarity to know what to do and what not to do, what is right and what is not. This is a special flower. Satyam cha ashtavidam pushpam, the commitment to honesty, to integrity, to transparency. These are the flowers that you offer to this Vishnu, to this Supreme, that is the Īśvara. With this, I conclude my lecture and we move on to a simple, short practice where we envision Īśvara as a small flame, a tiny flame burning in the space of the heart. I'm using the sound Om. Again, I wish to reiterate that the Omkara transcends all limitations of religion, caste, community, creed, nationality, etc., etc. It represents the sound of creation, the sound with which this entire universe comes to be. The Taittiriya Upanishad says, Om iti Brahma, Om iti eva sarvam. This Om represents the Supreme. It represents everything. And so we do a simple meditative practice using a mantra, using Om, visualizing the light, the lamp, the flame that glows eternally within us, the Īśvara within. I'd like you to sit comfortably, in a comfortable position, keep your back straight, chin down, eyes closed. Take a few breaths, deep breaths. Allow the mind to settle. Now please inhale and chant Om as slowly, as long as you can. I demonstrate once. Inhale. Breathe out as you chant. Disconnect to the sound. Breathe in and slowly, as long as you can. Chant Om as you breathe out. Inhale. 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 Continue a few more times. Now, draw your attention to the space of the heart in the center of the chest. Visualize this space like a small cave. This is the Dahara Akasha, or inner space where resides the substratum of this universe as a small flame shining brightly. As you breathe in and chant Om, visualize this flame glowing brighter and brighter. I'll give you a few minutes to do this. I repeat, visualize a small flame glowing beautifully in the center of your heart within a little cave. As you breathe in and you chant Om, visualize this flame shining, glowing brightly. Now visualize the glow of this flame spreading to every part of your body. Keep chanting Om. As you inhale, exhale and chant Om. Visualize this glow spreading all around you to your every part of your body, enveloping you in its effulgence, in its glow. Now, visualize yourself held in a shield of protection from the glow emanating from this flame that lies at your heart, in the core of your heart. The glow of this flame spreads around you, enveloping you, your friends, your family. It's light, protecting, guarding, nourishing. Keep inhaling and chanting Om as you do this. Now visualize this flame, the flame of your heart, connected to millions and millions and millions of other such tiny flames, shining in the hearts of all other humans across the world, to all plants, animals, birds, insects, reptiles, to all of nature, to all of creation. One continuous, unending chain, lamp, flame after flame, flame after flame, all held together, representing one truth, one unity. Don't chant as you do this, just visualize the lamp flame within you in connection, millions of flames, all creatures around the world. Just visualize the connection. As you visualize this connected world, so many hearts beating together, synchronicity, also take a moment to send forth your prayers, your intentions for wellness, for health, for joy, for peace, for safety. To all these connected Atmas, to all the souls that you have connected. Now draw your attention back to this small flame within your own heart. Offer your gratitude to this spark of the divine that is within you. Offer your gratitude for the gift of life, for every abundance, for every blessing. I will chant now. When I pause after every line, please chant Om once. Pratyagānandam Brahma Purusham Pranavasvarupam Akara Ukara Makara iti Tamikadha Samabharatadetadom iti Yanitva muchyati yogi janma samsārabandhanāt. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much for being here. Take care and stay safe.